Continuing our conversation now with Mayor Chokwe Lumumba of Jackson, Mississippi. Mayor, one of the representatives in New York, Congressman, said that the fact that Congress didn't pass that latest aid package was like giving a middle finger to the middle class. He did not mince words. As a mayor in a city that you say is overlooked by Washington so many times, what happens in Jackson, Mississippi in real life terms if you don't get an economic stimulus from Washington?
What it means is that people continue to suffer. People literally die because we're not able to get our hands around this pandemic. It shows that there are people in Washington that are out of touch with what the everyday person is dealing with. It shows that where our values are. If we're failing to provide aid, it's much like how we see our budget as a city. I speak often about a budget being a moral document. It reflects what our values are as a community. And if we're failing to fund the relief that people need, then as a nation, what we're saying is that we don't value the lives of the people that make up this country. And so in this pandemic, there's been a failure to take this pandemic take this circumstance, a hold of this circumstance in a comprehensive way from the very top. And so it's forced local leaders to take and make the responsible decisions. And so if we're required to make those decisions, then the aid should come directly to us. If we're going to be at the front of the battle, on the battle lines, then we should see the support that is consistent with that decision.
I'm always fascinated that there are all these commercials now with Fortune 500 companies cashing in on saying, we need to support our heroes, our healthcare workers, our bus drivers, our transit workers, our firefighters, our police. Are those the top 5 people that you have to lay off if you don't get federal aid from Washington, D.C. after having to deal with this pandemic?
Often the people who are left out of the discussion, we certainly value the role that they play. They're often the people that are on the front lines as we are dealing with a health crisis. But the people who are often not mentioned are those other service industry workers that are essential. Nobody talks about the grocery store person, the clerk who, because we need food, needs to be there. The person who, as we're telling people to socially distance, they are most susceptible to catching the virus because they're forced into the line of fire. And so I think that we have to take a comprehensive view of all of the direct and ancillary effects of this virus. Often we're admonishing people for not socially distancing, not realizing that social distancing is a bit of a luxury in some communities. If you live in a housing unit, if you live in a communal setting, then what does social distancing look like to you? It may not be as feasible or as easy to accomplish that as someone who has their own private residence. And so I think that we have to keep into account not only the health effects of this virus, but the economic contributing factors that also leave people in a vulnerable state as well.
Mayor, I was fascinated. There seemed to be 2 Mississippis. One, prior to members of the legislature getting sick, and the second being after the members of the legislature got sick. But the schools still seem to be a hodgepodge. Does Mississippi understand that a pandemic doesn't care about your political affiliations, really doesn't care about your race? It simply wants something to feed on.
There certainly is a lack of urgency. And I think that for some, it has been out of sight, out of mind until the virus lands on their doorstep. And then there's a sudden experience of sympathy or empathy that takes place. And so from day one, we've understood that it was our community that would be most vulnerable. From day one, we've been concerned about this pandemic, and we've experienced very close losses.
Another break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about what you and other Black politicians may have done to get the word out to Black populations that seem to be having a positive impact on how we deal with COVID-19. So stay with us.